Okay. So I'd like to take a moment and say thanks to all of you for coming this evening and being part of our class this evening. It has been a real joy to talk with all of you about this prayer, the Aspiration for Mahamudra of Definitive Meaning. When I first started learning about this prayer, I just found it to be incredibly inspiring, but a little confusing. So when I discovered Trungpa Rinpoche's book explaining the third Karmapa's prayer, it was like I had found a treasure chest. I was very excited because not only did it contain a really great translation of the prayer, it also contained a commentary on the meaning of the words. So those of you who have watched the previous videos in this series will know that the third Karmapa, who lived many centuries ago, was a Mahamudra master, and that his explanation of the path of Mahamudra is one of the most succinct that exist. And it was written in a very clever form because, as we explained, often Tibetan masters would write prayers of aspiration, aspiring to accomplish something, but then embed in the aspiration prayer the actual instructions for how to do the thing you're aspiring to. And so we've discovered already in the first verses of this prayer the basis for making the aspiration, which is our virtuous intent to accomplish Buddha awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings and accomplishing virtue toward that end. The next stanzas of the prayer talk about what practices we need to take on in order to practice the path of Mahamudra, such as understanding the four thoughts that turn the mind toward Dharma, understanding our precious opportunity in this life to practice the mind teachings of Mahamudra to discover our Buddha nature and to realize our Buddha nature. And so this preciousness of our life, the impermanence of life, the truth of karma and action, cause and result, and then finally the defects of being in the confusion of samsara. So we start there, and then we undertake the disciplines of accumulating merit and accumulating wisdom. And now we're at that part of the prayer where the third Karmapa is introducing us to the view, the meditation, and the action of Mahamudra. So in our last installment, we covered a couple of these verses. And normally we would start our class with a full recitation of the prayer, but I gabbed a little bit too much in the pre-class. So I'm not sure. Well, maybe we should go ahead and recite it anyway, now that I've said that, because I think that for those folks who are joining us for the first time this evening, it might be edifying to hear the prayer recited. So I will go ahead and do that. It'll take about 5 minutes to recite. And I already looked it up so I could have it here for everyone. Let's see if I can make this work. Yeah, there it is. Now we'll see if we can do a screen share. Okay, screen share. Okay, there it is. All right. Okay. It begins like this. Namo Guru. Guru, yidams of all mandalas and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and 3 times, kindly consider me. Support and bless the fulfillment of my aspirations. Streams of virtue unsullied by threefold fixation are born on the snow-covered mountain of the pure intentions and action of myself and all innumerable beings. May they flow into the ocean of the Buddha's 4 kayas. Until that is attained throughout all births, all lives, May even the words wrongdoing and suffering be unheard. May we enjoy the splendor of an ocean of happiness and virtue. Acquiring the best leisure and resources, may we have faith, diligence, and wisdom. Relying upon good spiritual friends and receiving the essence of the instructions, may we practice them properly without obstacle. In all our lives, may we practice genuine Dharma. Hearing scripture and reasoning frees from unknowing. Contemplating the instructions conquers the darkness of doubt. The light of meditation clearly reveals the nature as it is. May the brilliance of the three wisdoms increase. The ground is the two truths beyond the extremes of eternalism and nihilism. Through the supreme path of the two accumulations, beyond the extremes of exaggeration and denial. The fruition, the two benefits beyond the extremes of samsara and nirvana is attained. May we encounter Dharma free from error and deviation. The ground of purification is the mind's nature, union of lucidity, emptiness. What purifies is the great Vajra Yoga of Mahamudra. What is purified is the stains of adventitious. May the result of purification, the stainless Dharmakaya, be revealed. Severing misconceptions of the ground is certainty of the view. Sustaining that without distraction is the point of meditation. Training in all aspects of meditation is the best action. May we have the confidence of the view, meditation, and action. All dharmas are mind's manifestation. The mind, there is no mind. It is empty of mind's essence. Empty, it is unceasing and can appear as anything. Having scrutinized it, may we find it. We mistake self-appearance, which has never existed, to be an object. Under ignorance's power, we mistake self-awareness to be a self. Under the power of dualistic fixation, we wander in the expanse of samsara. May we get to the bottom of ignorance and delusion. Not something, it is not seen even by Buddhas. Not nothing, it is the ground of all samsara and nirvana. This is not a contradiction. It is unity, the middle way. May we realize the mind's nature beyond extremes. Nothing indicates this, saying, it is this. Nothing negates this, saying, it is not this. Beyond the intellect, dharmata is not composite. May we realize the perfect ultimate truth. Not realizing this, we circle in the ocean of samsara. If this is realized, Buddha is not elsewhere. Everything is this. There is nothing that is not this. May we know dharmata, exposing the all basis. Appearances are mind. Emptiness is also mind. Realization is mind. Delusion is our own mind too. Arisen, it's mind. Stopped, it's also mind. May we sever all misconceptions in the mind. Not sullied by the meditation that is conceptual effort, nor stirred by the wind of ordinary distractions. May we know how to rest naturally and freely, not altering. May we be skilled in and sustain the practice of the mind. May the subtle and coarse waves of thought be naturally calmed. May the river of mind unmoving come to natural rest. Free from the polluting stains of torpor and dullness, may the ocean of shamatha be unmovingly stable. When looking again and again at the mind, which has nothing to look at, nothing to see is vividly seen as it is. That is the resolution of doubts about what it is and is not. Without delusion, may we recognize our own nature. Looking at objects, there are no objects. Looking at mind, there is no mind. Looking at both, dualism is liberated in its own place. May we realize the clear light, the mind's nature. This freedom from mental engagement is Mahamudra. Beyond extremes, it is the great middle way. As this includes everything, it is also called the great perfection. May we gain the confidence that to know one is to realize the meaning of all. Unceasing great bliss without attachment. the unveiled clear light, free from conception, and spontaneously present freedom from thought beyond intellect. May effortless experiences be unceasing. May clinging to experiences as good be naturally liberated. May the delusion of thoughts being bad be purified in the expanse. May ordinary mind, with nothing to remove or add, to lose or gain, unelaborate, the truth of Dharmata be realized. Although being's nature is always Buddha, not realizing it, we wander in endless samsara. May unbearable compassion arise in us for all beings who suffer endlessly. The display of unbearable compassion is unceasing. Within that affection, its empty nature arises nakedly. May we cultivate this integrated path without error constantly throughout day and night. The eyes and clairvoyances produced by meditation, the ripening of beings, the purification of Buddha realms, and the completion of aspirations to the Buddha's qualities. May we perfect completion, ripening, and purification, achieving Buddhahood. Through the compassion of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the power of whatever pure virtue there is, may the pure aspirations of myself and all beings be fulfilled in accord with our intentions. Okay, thank you. Like I say, every time I read it something else jumps out at me. Some phrase that's inspiring comes out, or I see a meaning in it that I didn't see before. It's endlessly instructive. And if you have any time to recite it on a weekly basis or whenever you get a chance, please do. Now, I don't usually take questions during the presentation, but Daniel, you're one of the hosts. So is there something I need to know?
I just wanted to make a comment about the prayer.
Yeah, okay.
There's a different translation that I usually read when I do read it. And I noticed that your translation, it's a little bit different, but I like hearing it because it hits me in a different way. And as I read I try to sometimes now find different translations, because then it's like it's coming at me from a different direction.
Mm-hmm. This is part of the, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think that because we are still in this first wave of Tibetan Buddhism in America. I mean, because if we look at the history, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche came to the United States in like 1970. So we're still in this early period of the transmission of Dharma, the Tibetan Dharma, from Tibet to a new land. And so as a result, we're going to see lots of different iterations as these Tibetan texts are translated into English by different people with different backgrounds coming from different places. And it's kind of nice, it's kind of nice to see the different experiences people bring to it. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche used to encourage us to recite aspiration prayers in Tibetan so that we could have the blessing of doing it in the language in which it was written. However, later in his life, he said, aspiration prayers are really important because he said, if you can aspire to something, that's something that you can eventually accomplish. So he said, you better start doing them in English so that the meaning of the aspiration goes in deeper. So I appreciate that comment. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a little time now to go to the text itself, and hang on here a second, and then begin looking at. Hang on while I figure out what I'm doing here. Okay, there we go. I'm learning about all of the capabilities of my laptop. I got a new laptop a few months ago, and I'm still learning its features, and it's amazing. So I'm going to bring the actual the commentary text up here so that people can see it. And what I'd like to do, if you wouldn't mind, is I'd like to go over several verses and then pause and take questions if that's okay. That way I can make a little progress in getting the text read. Because I think it's 8 classes, is that right? Or is it just 6?
We had 6.
You had 6? Okay, well, we'll get as far as we can get.
We are happy to extend if you can, and if we need.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is frequently happens to me. Sorry. Okay. So this was the last one that we looked at. The last time we were together was number 13. Not realizing this, one circles in the ocean of samsara. Realizing this is no other than enlightenment. Don't you like the way it said it in the other one? Realizing this, Buddha is not elsewhere. I thought that was pretty cool. Nothing is affirmed or negated at all. And in the other prayer, it said, everything is this, there is nothing that is not this. And part of the reason that translation speaks to me is because from the point of view of the teachings themselves, the nature of our mind is emptiness and lucidity. Sometimes they say emptiness and luminosity, but they also say that this is actually the nature, or sometimes it's called Dharmakaya. And so that's actually taught to be the nature of all things. So all of those people who keep quoting Carl Sagan, who said we're all made of star stuff, they're actually right from the point of view of the Buddha Dharma. And that the nature of our mind is actually the nature of all things. And this is also spoken about very briefly in one of the 3 lamp offering prayers that we recite every year on January 1st. You can go back and look at it, but you'll see that I'm trying to remember which of the 3 prayers, but it says that the nature of this light is the nature of all things. So it's really kind of nice. So, and then this part of the prayer asks, may we realize the essential point of the Dharmata, the ground of everything. So that takes us to number 14. And if while I'm speaking, you come up with a question, feel free to jot it down on your notepad or type it into chat if you wish, and then I'll stop in a few minutes and take questions. And I just realized that I forgot to say a prayer at the beginning. Palden sawe lama rinpoche, dagi chi or pede denshila, kadran chembugane che sente. So that's praying for the blessing of the lamas. So number 14, both appearance is mind and emptiness is mind. Both realization is mind and confusion is mind. Both birth is mind and cessation is mind. May all doubts about mind be resolved. Now, as you remember from earlier verses, the 3rd Karmapa is using every single teaching device known to the Tibetan monks. He's using every single one that he could possibly think of to help us understand the teaching of Mahamudra. And so he's talking about all things being mind. So appearance is mind and emptiness is mind. In other words, our mind's basic nature is empty lucidity. And that basic nature, if we come to know it, is Buddhahood. And so, but what it's saying here is that mind is the seat of all of our experience, whether it's the experience of the 5 senses, or it's the experience of the 6th sense, which is our thinking mind, or if it's the 7th consciousness, the self clinging. The self-consciousness, I'm sorry, self-consciousness is the wrong word. The kleshic consciousness or the emotional consciousness, which is flavored with selfishness. And then finally, the all-basis consciousness, the 8th consciousness. So it's basically saying that mind, all of the aspects of mind everything is mind. Everything is mind. It doesn't mean that literally that table over there is mind. What it means is our experience of that table is happening in our mind. It isn't literally that that table is made of mind. It's not like that. It's actually that everything that we experience is mental experience that is ours. We can't experience anybody else's experience, but we can experience ours. And everything we know is experienced through our mind. So when we're happy, that's the mind. When we're unhappy, that's the mind, and so forth. Realization, that's the mind. Confusion, that's the mind. When birth and cessation here that can be talked about from two different things. It can be the idea of thoughts arising. That could be birth, or it could be the actual birth of a being. But the idea is that it's all of these experiences are happening in the mind. Trungpa Rinpoche in his commentary says, in the sutra tradition, we gather the accumulations for many eons, practice, meditate, and then attain realization. With little effort, we will understand something intellectually, but with great effort, we will definitely understand it. We can, in the sutra tradition, realize the fruition, meaning Buddhahood, by means of constant meditation and gathering the accumulations. And the accumulations are virtuous activities like generosity, patience, ethics, and so on. For many eons. Otherwise, we will not reach realization. However, those of us who are on the path of secret mantra or the Vajrayana, we find an authentic guru and we meditate according to the guru's instructions. And I like how he says here, meditates and undergoes hardship. The hardship could be the disappointment of our ego. And if you remember the teachings of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, he used to delight in helping people's egos crash and burn by being very confrontational in his teaching style. But some of our gurus are a lot kinder to us, and they help us by being kind and loving teachers who help us to see through our confusion with careful targeted teaching that gets to the heart of the matter. So he's saying we can, when Trungpa Rinpoche writes here, when we use the very profound methods of Mahamudra, when the guru points directly to the mind, then by meditating 1 or 2 days, perhaps one of us will realize the fruition. Again, the idea is that, as we spoke about previously, Mahamudra consists of two phases. The first phase of Mahamudra practice is called the preliminary, the preliminaries to Mahamudra. And then the second phase of Mahamudra is the actual practice. So those of you who have heard of the Nundro practice, Nundro means literally preliminary. Then those preliminaries or Nundro are how all of us begin our Mahamudra practice. And then don't you know, even this first part, the preliminaries is divided into 2 parts, the common preliminaries and the uncommon preliminaries. The common preliminaries are the 4 thoughts that turn the mind toward Dharma: our precious human birth, impermanence, karma, and the defects of samsara. By contemplating these, we get what one teacher called fuel. We have the fuel to gain what some folks call escape velocity from the sufferings of samsara. And so these contemplations, these 4 thoughts, are the preliminaries, the first of the preliminaries to Mahamudra practice. Once we have contemplated those and worked with our teacher to understand them, then we practice the second set of preliminaries, which are the extraordinary preliminaries of taking refuge and engendering bodhicitta. That's the first of them, taking refuge and engendering bodhicitta. Second one is the purification practice of the Buddha Vajra Sattva. Let's see if I can spell that. Vajrasattva. Vajrasattva is the Buddha of purity. And by reciting his mantra, we mentally visualize the purification of all of our negativities. It's a wonderful practice. The third of the extraordinary practices of Nundro is called the offering of the Mandala. And in that practice, we offer our own body, speech, and mind, as well as all the wondrous things of the world, as an offering to the gurus, and then ask them to teach us Mahamudra. And then finally, the fourth of the extraordinary foundations is called Guru Yoga. By imagining all of the masters of the Mahamudra lineage being present in front of us, we ask for them to bless us so that we can practice Mahamudra meditation. And we ask over and over again for an understanding of what is called co-emergent wisdom. And we'll talk about that later on. We might even get to it tonight, but if we don't get to it tonight, I'll try to remember to get to it next time. By making these aspirations and so forth in the Nundro practice, we learn the first steps on the Mahamudra path. And what do we do at the end of each one of the 4 extraordinary foundation sessions or preliminary sessions? In the refuge practice and bodhicitta practice, we imagine that we're in the presence of all the enlightened beings that exist, and that we take refuge in them and on behalf of all beings. And then we engender the bodhisattva motivation to benefit beings. And what do we do at the end? We imagine that all of those enlightened beings dissolve into us and bless us. And we think for just a moment, my mind and the awakened one's mind are one and have merged inseparably. For many people, according to the 16th Karmapa, who gave a teaching on this, a very brief teaching on this in Columbus, Ohio, like back in 1980, the 16th Karmapa said, these little tiny meditations at the end of each session of Nundro, he said, it actually is Mahamudra meditation. It's just very simplified instructions, but merging all of the minds of the awakened ones with our mind is a way of practicing Mahamudra in a very simple and easy way. He said, many people try to rush through their preliminaries, thinking, oh, on the other side of this preliminaries, that's when the real fun begins, when I actually do the practice of Mahamudra. And he said they miss the point of the preliminaries, which is to help them to connect to the nature of their mind through this visualization and resting meditation. So anyway, just wanted to mention that, because here in this sentence, he talks about the guru pointing directly to mind. And we may say, well, what's that? And it usually is, it would consist of a practice interview with your teacher, where your teacher instructs you on how to meditate. You meditate, and then while you are meditating, the teacher gives you further instructions about mind's nature. And these instructions help to unlock our misunderstanding about the mind and help us to have an inkling of the nature of mind. Now, if you remember from one of the previous chats we've had here, I've talked about Khenpo Rinpoche's teachings to us about the pointing out instruction. And when he was talking to us in, oh gosh, was it 2011, when he was giving the wonderful teachings on Khenpo Gongshar? I know he gave them there in California. And when he was giving these teachings in Columbus, somebody went up to the question microphone and said, Rinpoche, what happens in the pointing out interview? And he smiled and he said, well, he said, ideally, a student would be able to meditate really, really well. And if they meditate really, really well, they'll actually accomplish the first level of bodhisattva awakening right there in the interview with their teacher. And the gentleman standing at the microphone said, well, Rinpoche, you and I both know that that's unlikely. And he said, yes, it is rare. And he said, well, then what's happening for most of us in the pointing out instruction? He said, well, he says, I don't know for sure. And I always loved it when Khenpo Rinpoche would say, I don't know for sure. He said, I don't know for sure what happens. He said, but he says, I'll tell you what I think. He says, I think that what happens is that when the student is meditating well and the teacher is good at teaching or whatever, he said that the student will have a deep understanding. It's still intellectual, but they will have a profound intellectual insight into the nature of mind that allows them to know how to meditate. It gives them the clue that they need to be able to meditate on the nature of mind. And he said, that's what I think is happening. And so then he went on to say, and this is partly the reason why he said, pointing out instruction is like, he didn't call it a double-edged sword, but he said it's a complicated thing, because for some people, it is so dependent upon being in the presence of the teacher that when they leave the presence of the teacher, they can't remember how to meditate. They forget. So he said, using the gradual methods of Mahamudra meditation that are taught in the Mahamudra, sort of like the mainline Mahamudra texts, he said, that's the way to really uncover the nature of your mind. He said, because then he said, it's DIY, you do it yourself. And when you uncover the nature of your own mind, he said, for many people, it's much more powerful. And it's because then they can be completely and utterly convinced. So anyway, I wanted to mention this because I know a lot of folks, they look forward to receiving pointing out instructions and so on. And Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, he claimed to never give them himself. The only time I actually witnessed him giving them was in the 3-year retreat. He gave them in the 3-year retreat. But then afterwards, I watched him give similar instructions to people standing at the microphone at KTD Monastery during his 10-day teachings. He would be giving them pointing out instructions and they didn't know it. So, I mean, it's really, he was just an amazing master and he was able to get through to people in lots of different ways. But what Trungpa Rinpoche is saying here in his commentary on this verse of the prayer is that if all of these things are our mind, and if we can practice so that all doubts about the mind are resolved, this is a very powerful thing. And what Trungpa Rinpoche is saying is that even in the sutra tradition, it takes a very, very long time to attain awakening. However, in the mantra tradition, or in the Vajrayana tradition, we find a teacher, receive instructions, and then through those instructions, gradually, we can come to know the nature of our mind in a single lifetime. And so he's basically saying that this is a very important thing for us to understand. Then he says, likewise, the text says this is very profound, inexpressible, and beyond the range of intellect. Right now, we have just realized things a little bit, he said. So the idea here is that we've had an intellectual understanding of it, but that intellectual understanding is not the same as an experience, and it's not the same as realization. I can't recall whether I've spoken about this hierarchy before, but if I haven't, let me make sure I mention it tonight. Trungpa Rinpoche, in one of his other texts, said that our realization of Buddha nature happens in 3 steps. First, we understand the intellectual teachings. We receive teachings that says Buddha nature is like this, or Buddha nature is like that. And so we receive these teachings and we come to an intellectual understanding of it. That's the first level. The second level is what happens when we actually begin to meditate. When we actually begin to meditate, we will have interior experiences. They don't have to be fantastic. They just have to be useful. And by useful, I mean, sometimes we'll have an insight. Wow, all of my thoughts are pushing me towards suffering. Why don't I have thoughts that push me toward happiness? So we may come to small realizations, small experiential understandings of how the nature of things are. But according to the teachings, what we have to do with these experiences is actually set them aside and continue practicing as though they hadn't happened. Because if we cling to the experiences as being special or belonging to us, then that only increases ego fixation, which stands in the way of our reaching the state of Buddhahood, which is a state that is beyond ego. And so understanding is where we begin. And then when we meditate, we may have an experience that encourages us along the way, but we have to set even those experiences aside and keep practicing meditation until realization arises. And so there is a difference. This is really fun. Trungpa Rinpoche says, when we realize this, suddenly we do not have to try for many eons, but rather suddenly we realize it by means of this profound method of meditating on mind. In that one instant of realization, it will all seem to be stable, but a little later we will think, yesterday I had a good meditation experience, but today it's gone. What happened? He said the reason for this is that we're not familiar with it. We're not familiar with it. We have not gathered the accumulations for many eons. We haven't worked hard for many years. Right now, it has been pointed out to us instantly through a profound method, meaning from our teachers pointing out instructions. That's how it's been pointed out. So we have a moment where we understand it. But then it says one instant it seems we understand, and the next instant we think, I can't understand now. He says, when this happens, we shouldn't abandon our practice, thinking that it's unimportant. We must definitely meditate with exertion. And if we meditate, our understanding, experience, and realization will become stable. So in other words, this verse is encouraging us to sort of bear with the fact that practice takes time, understanding that appearance is mind, emptiness is mind, realization is mind, confusion is mind. May all doubts about the mind be resolved. In other words, through the practice of meditation, may we come to see the nature of mind as being the nature of everything. And then I'm going to read number 15, and then we'll pause. Let's see how I'm doing on time. Okay, we're about at the bottom, so I want to make at least one more. Now, how to determine the nature of mind by meditating upon it. Number 15, not corrupted by the effort of mind-made meditation and not blown by the winds of everyday busyness, may we know how to rest in the unfabricated innate spontaneity and skillfully maintain the practice of the truth of mind. And Trungpa Rinpoche says in Mahamudra meditation, we rest in the true nature of mind rather loosely. If we think, using my mind, I will make it clear, I will make it peaceful, I will make it blissful, we are creating something that's made up by the mind. So when the text says, not corrupted by the effort of mind-made meditation, he's saying that this means that we're not trying to force or create something. And then he also says the mind is not blown by the winds of everyday busyness, which are discursive thoughts and disturbing emotion. These are the everyday busyness, and the wind of these things stirs it all up. So then he says, what is present when one is not stained by the faults of mind-made meditation or everyday busyness? In the tradition of Dzogchen, one has to reach a new clarity by distinguishing the difference between mind and awareness. This is just one example of an oral instruction. In our own oral instructions in the Karma Kagyu, one arrives at unfabricated mind. So even though they use different words, the Dzogchen tradition on one hand talks about distinguishing mind and awareness. The Mahamudra tradition on the other hand talks about mind discovering unfabricated mind, which that means that we, with respect to the true nature, which is empty and luminous, we don't try to change it into something empty and then try to change it into something luminous. Rather, We rest in what is called the nature of mind itself, and why it's called unfabricated or innate. Innate means it's native to us, it's ours. And he says, whatever the condition of the mind is said to be unfabricated and innate. We should meditate with spontaneity, and that whatever exists in this true nature, we should just rest in that way. Otherwise, we will just create something new. Now, what I have to say about this is that he doesn't clearly delineate what's being done here. So we're probably going to have to fill in the blanks for you with a couple of examples. Do you remember what we were talking about a little while ago? I'm going to stop the screen share for a second. Do you remember what we were talking about a little while ago? We were talking about the Nundro practice, where you imagine we'll just use the first practice of refuge and bodhicitta, where you imagine that you're in the presence of all these great masters who have realization. And then you take refuge in them and so forth and so on. And then at the end, you dissolve them into yourself and rest in the confidence that your mind and the guru's mind have mixed inseparably. When you do that, it brings about a moment of quiet in the mind, where you just experience the idea of my mind and the guru's mind being one. And when you do that, your mind is unfabricated in that moment. It takes some fabrication, the idea, my mind and the guru's mind mix, but then you stop analyzing, you stop thinking, you stop everything and just let the mind relax in the confidence of that unity. And that is a genuine moment of non-fixation. And in that moment of non-fixation, we see a possibility. And that possibility is that we can see that moment, as the basic nature of mind. I guess you could call it the canvas upon which everything appears, or the mirror in which everything appears. And understanding that, this is why the 16th Karmapa said, you need to be present for these moments. It also happens in Chenrezig practice, and Tara practice, and Medicine Buddha practice, and Amitabha practice. At the very end, the Buddha or Bodhisattva dissolves into you, and then you yourself dissolve into light, and then you rest briefly at that moment in that unity. And that's the same thing, you see. So that's what's going on in the practice of what they call deity yoga and guru yoga. Deity yoga and guru yoga both bring about these little moments of genuine meditation that only last for a few seconds, but like a glass of water, drop by drop, the water fills the glass. By the way, I see Bruce had to leave. I was sorry to hear about that. So, but that's okay. He'll be with us the next time. So let's take a moment and see if anybody has questions. I can take questions for about 5 minutes. And then I want to try to go to one more verse, and then we'll complete it about 20 minutes to the hour, if that's okay with everyone. Any questions? That was a lot, sorry. But questions?
I just have a quick one for you to go over. When you talked about the uncommon or extraordinary, there were 4 things.
Yes.
And one was the bodhicitta, the opening of the mandala, the guru meditation, and I don't remember what the 4th one was.
Yeah, let me illustrate or whatever. So these are called the 4 extraordinary preliminaries. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm putting this in chat in case that's useful. Okay, so the first one is called refuge and bodhicitta.
Oh, and refuge.
Okay, that's the
Okay.
first one. The second one is called purification. the purification practice of the Buddha Vajrasattva. Many people will know
Oh, okay.
Vajrasattva as being the Buddha of whose 100 syllable. I'm not going to spell it right. Syllable. Mantra. Those of you who have anybody who has tried to learn the 100 syllable mantra of Vajrasattva knows it's quite challenging. But this 100 syllable mantra is the way Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche described it. The 100 syllable mantra is paired with the attitude of confession, because as much as we'd like to think that Buddhism is different from Christianity, where confession exists. Guess what? There's confession in Buddhism too. You rely on the Buddha as your witness, and then you regret you're wrong. You resolve not to repeat it, and then you recite a remedy, which could be the 100 syllable mantra, for example. So the third of the extraordinary preliminaries is called the offering of the mandala. And we offer the mandala of our own body, speech, and mind. Mandala is like a universe, so to speak. So we offer the universe of our own body, speech, and mind, as well as the external universe. We offer all of that to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And then the fourth one is called Guru Yoga. And this consists of imagining that we're in the presence of all of the enlightened masters and that they bless us. They give us the blessings. They purify us and give us blessings so that we can practice Mahamudra. So does that fill in the blanks for you?
Yeah, thank you. And then when right after that, when you were talking about the preliminaries and there were 3 things that we needed to understand.
Oh, sure. I can talk about that.
What
yeah.
was that?
Yeah,
What
I
was
can
the
talk about that. Yeah.
What was the
yeah.
title of that?
Yeah,
Of that
mhm. I can do
process?
that for you. I can do that for you. The 3 phases of Mahamudra.
Okay, that's what it was.
Okay, the first one is understanding. The second is experience. And the third is realization.
Oh, that's so clear.
Yeah, because at first, when we learn about Mahamudra, we just do things like studying this prayer. I mean, honestly, you know, because studying this prayer, as you can see, he kind of pulls out the stops and uses like every trick in the book. You know, those of you who have learned about ground, path, and fruition, I got something here for you. So I'm going to teach it that way. He uses all of these different frameworks. And then he says, remember the framework of purification, you know, the object of purification, the means of purification, and what is purified. Remember that one? Well, we've got a teaching for you that's in that framework as well. And so he uses every single possible way that a person can learn something in Dharma, and he teaches about Mahamudra that way, which is awesome because this way it can be understood both by scholars and by average people like us. So it's kind of it's got a nice ring to it. Other questions that people might have?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, then let's go on to number 16 and see if we can put that together, and then we'll let you go for the evening. Let's see. Yeah. I think we got it. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is the next thing the prayer discusses is the practice of shamatha, which is calm abiding meditation, and vipassana, which is insight meditation. So you see here, shamatha is mentioned, and that is the practice of calm abiding. Many of you will have learned it as breath awareness meditation, where you are aware of the breath coming in, aware of the breath going out, and so on. And then Vipassana meditation is, it's called insight meditation, and it has to do with understanding and meditating on the mind itself. Most of us have learned a lot about shamatha, but we haven't learned a lot about Vipassana yet. So he's going to first talk about shamatha, and then he's going to talk about Vipassana. So we're going to learn something about both of these. Number 16, the waves of subtle and gross thoughts subside by themselves. The waters of unmoving mind rest naturally. May the ocean of shamatha be undisturbed, free of the dregs of drowsiness. Those of you who have practiced meditation know that the two things we struggle with the most are agitation and drowsiness. Those are the two things that are the hardest to deal with when we're doing shamatha practice. And so he's basically saying, may our shamatha be free from these two problems. The problem of subtle and gross thoughts. May these, so he uses the example or the metaphor of the ocean. And he says, may the waves of these subtle and gross thoughts subside. May the waters of unmoving mind rest naturally. And may the ocean of shamatha be undisturbed, free of the dregs of drowsiness. So then next time we're going to talk about Vipassana. And that will be number 17. So Vipassana, he says, verse number 17, looking again and again at the mind that cannot be looked at, one sees clearly, just as it is, the truth of not seeing. Resolving any doubt as to how it is or is not, may we recognize our unconfused nature by ourselves. That's going to take some unpacking. So we'll start with number 16 next time and talk a little bit about 16, 17, and possibly even 18 next time. Yeah, I think we can do that. So we're making progress. And hopefully the next episode here, we'll talk a little bit more about shamatha and Vipassana. So if you have any shamatha questions, like, when I meditate, this happens, or when I meditate, that happens, we can talk about that next time too. So, I mean, I do this all the time. It's like, when I meditate, this happens, or when I meditate, that happens. So I enjoy talking about that. We'll say the meditation doctor is in. So I did hold you over a little bit. Sorry about that. But I did promise to have you out at 20 minutes to the hour, and we did it, kind of. So I'd like to thank all of you for being with us tonight and being so patient as we work through this text, which, as you can see, uses metaphor, simile, poetic language, exaggeration. And it embeds a lot of material that needs to be unpacked. And that's part of the reason I like teaching it, because these prayers are written to be very dense with meaning. And even if we don't get the meaning when we read it the first time or the second time or the 80th time, the more we read it, the more the prayer begins to teach us. And so hopefully between our recitation of this prayer and Trungpa Rinpoche's explanation, we'll be able to kind of own a little bit of that meaning for ourselves. So I'm sorry that I can't take more questions tonight, but I'll try next time not to have so much chit chat at the beginning, because I love to talk about the Columbus KTC, and I know we spent a little time at the beginning on that, but we'll try and get down to it the next time. So thank you.